Good morning, everyone. My name is Jagannathan. I'm CTO at Xangati, and today's webinar is top 5 battle-tested best practices for smooth VDI deployments. Thank you very much for joining. And I'll just give a couple of minutes here to see if we can get some more people joining in. And before we get truly started, while we do that, let me give you a sense of who I am. I'm the founder and CTO at Xangati. As I said, my background is in real-time analytics, network security, and high-performance computing going back 30 years. Most recently, 8 years back, I was at NetZentry, Reactive Network Solutions, a network security company, Xerox PARC, Sun Microsystems in the 90s, and SRI International in the 80s. You have my email address and my Twitter handle, so feel free to contact me as needed. So before we get started, one of the things I'd like to do is know about who you folks are. And the best way to do that is by having you participate in a very small question with answers. So I'm going to start you off with the first question, which is the size of your VDI deployment. So you should be able to see this, and the 4 answers are large-scale VDI deployment, 1,000 and plus, small-scale VDI deployment, less than 1,000, VDI pilot deployment, no deployment so far are the 4 choices. So I'm going to give you another 20 seconds or so for you to complete your vote, and I think you'll be able to see the results at the conclusion of the voting. All right, so we got 6 votes. We need more votes coming in. There are a lot more people viewing it. All right, I'm going to stop the audience voting so that you can see the results. Looks like you folks are in the VDI pilot mostly, and small-scale VDI deployment some. So that's interesting. So let's go to the next slide. So before we start on the 5 battle-tested best practices, generally what we want to speak about is keys to successful VDI deployment, and these are things that we have been able to discern from our experience with hundreds of customers, literally worldwide, focused on VDI. So it's very important to know your infrastructure in its entirety, in the sense that you have to not only understand clients and desktops, which is the obvious place to start, clients, desktops, and users, but you also need to understand the intervening network. You need to understand the servers that the desktops, the virtual desktops run on, the storage that the servers use, and often overlooked but quite important are physical and legacy applications of servers that end up getting used by the desktops or by other applications that the desktops use. And you need to understand not just what each of them are doing, you need to understand their interactions. The second key is to know your application. You need to understand, what ports it's talking on, what protocols is it using, what kind of services is it delivering. And, there are desktop protocols, there are other kinds of protocols, web services protocols. All these things are things that you need to become familiar with because the VDI approach really depends on ports, protocols, and services working very smoothly. And the last two keys are pretty obvious, but they are, I think the way you get to them is not necessarily obvious. So the first is, how much time does it take for you to detect issues? And for that, you really want to be in the world of real-time metrics. Knowing that a problem has occurred an hour back or half an hour back is not a good thing in today's world. So real-time metrics for performance, availability, and capacity is necessary. And once you know there's an issue, the mean time to resolve these issues require you to actually have essentially a video recording, if you like, a streaming recording of exactly what occurred so that you can replay it, assess it, and share it. Again, this is a progression forward from the world of static reports, snapshots, and I think this is consistent with the way our infrastructure works today. So, I'm sure you have questions as we move forward. There's a place where you can enter them. At the end of the presentation, we'll spend time fielding questions and answering them. So, as you get questions, please enter them so that we can proceed. So, let's get to the meat of this webinar, which is the best practices for smooth VDI deployments. The first one is visualization, or what is commonly referred to generally as monitoring. Monitoring means a lot of things, but to the extent that it means visualization, you want to be visualizing what is going on in real time with high fidelity. So what does that mean? In real time means you want to be as close to live in terms of what you're seeing. It's no good seeing stuff which is multiple minutes or hours behind. You want to be dealing with high fidelity, meaning that even if you're live, you want things to be updated on a second-by-second basis, if possible, so that you actually are looking at a live and continuous view of your VDI environment. You need to contrast this best practice with legacy practices, which are really about reports, generating reports. They are pretty sophisticated, but they tend to give you a snapshot of what happened in the past. And the way I think of it is really the difference between doing a triage versus doing a postmortem. And you want to be in the triage business in this particular case. So visualization, is part of monitoring. Now, other things which are also in the framework of real time are alerting. So you want to know exactly when alerts pop up. Any analytics, you want it to be live, not something that's done in the afternoon. Any recommendations and remediations, you want to be able to have the ability to act on them as they occur, and if possible, deal with them immediately. Some things you can, some things you can't, but you certainly want that option. So that's best practice number one, and this is quite in our experience, this has actually been a very powerful practice for a lot of folks because they find things in their system which come and go that they would never have seen if they had an average view with reports. So we live in a world of intermittent problems. We have people saying my desktop generally works, but it stops for a few seconds or a few minutes and then comes back. And those are things that are very hard to track if you have long-term reports. So given that we have intermittent problems as well as chronic problems, dealing with them in real time is quite important. So let me go to the next best practice. And this is pretty intuitive, but I think it's worth spending a little bit of time on, is you need to understand end-to-end behavior in a piecewise manner. So generally, when you're looking at VDI, the center, the fulcrum is around the desktops, and then you have clients consuming what the desktops project, and you have users associated with these clients. But there is a number of supporting infrastructure that enables these desktops to do what they do, and that involves hosts, virtual hosts, depending on which hypervisor or which stack you're using, and these hosts actually are helping the VMs, the desktop, that is, interact with storage, which obviously are a very big source of worry in terms of potential contention and underperformance. They also interact with legacy servers or backend servers. They interact with the network and the internet, and of course the clients and the desktop themselves interact with each other over a network, which in an untethered world could be quite complex. So again, it is very important to understand this end-to-end behavior piecewise. It is good to know how long it took to log in, but it's not sufficient. You have to understand what contributed to the login time being what it is. So those are things that are important. This kind of piecewise analysis will help you with things like boot storms and other kinds of VDI specific issues that you end up seeing. So this is something which I think gets overlooked a little bit, but it's nonetheless important. So let's go to best practice number 3. Now, any monitoring system, has to not just rely on giving you all the data and hoping that you figure out when things are going south and when things are normal. I mean, we can do that to some extent. We can do that for a little while, but to expect everyone to do it on a sustained basis is impractical, particularly in large deployments. So alerting is something which is very common in any kind of monitoring environment. And there are really 2 ways in which people look at alerting. The important thing is to really adopt both of them. And best practice alerting is really relying on experts on what kind of network latency is meaningful, what kind of storage latency is too much, what kind of CPU ready or scheduling time is problematic on a host. All those things, there are numbers that experts pretty much will agree on within a range. But that's okay. I mean, that's a good place to start. But self-learned alerting is something that will help you with respect to your environment, in the sense that your environment and your users may have very specific behavior that can be learned. And that is, again, combining the 2 is very important. So, learning takes time. While there is learning going on, best practice alerting can be quite useful. So this is something that is quite important to keep in mind. Again, I'll pause for a second and remind you, if you have any questions, please enter them. I will get to them in about 15 minutes or so and spend about 10 minutes answering them. So, really looking forward to that. So we are down to best practice 3, and the next one that I think is a very important and, in some ways, somewhat sophisticated best practice, but it's something you have to expect to deal with, is resource contentions. The reality is the virtual desktops are running in a shared environment. The hosts are really giving the impression of multiple desktops, but they really are a single physical host or multiple hosts which are physical, much less than the number of VMs. So when you run hot, when you run at 10, 20 desktops per host, you are going to get resource contentions with respect to CPU and memory. Not all the time, but at times. Again, these desktops, to the extent that they use storage, they become a source of contention because storage is not only used by the desktops, but they are also shared by legacy applications and other kinds of things because storage tends to be a big capex item, so there tends to be more sharing than less sharing. And that can be a source of pretty toxic contentions. And again, network is another source of contention, and contention can manifest in two ways. The bandwidth contention is one that people understand, but contentions which cause latencies to go up are really the ones which are pretty bad from a VDI standpoint, because the ability to deal with fluctuating latencies is a much more significant challenge. You can deal with bandwidth a little better than you can deal with latency. So the point of this is not something that is specific to desktops. This is not something that's specific to clients, hosts, and storage. It's the interaction between desktops and storage, desktops and the CPU and memory of the host, desktops and the network, clients talking to desktops over the network. So these are cross-silo, if you like, interactions. So your silos in themselves may look sound, but their interactions may be problematic. So this is something that one has to pay attention to as a practice, so that you have the ability to understand when contentions occur. And when contentions occur in an environment like a VDI environment, those who are affected are not just those who are direct victims or direct perpetrators, if you like. Anybody in the neighborhood, anybody on that host will be affected. You could have a VDI implementation where the desktops are running pretty much by themselves, but there are a couple of other VMs that you don't know about that are running that may do some significant storage or use CPU significantly at times, and suddenly you're getting calls from your users complaining that the response is poor. You have a long end-to-end line to chop up and understand piecewise, and cross-silo understanding is very important in that process. So let's go to the next slide, which is the last of the best practices. We'll review these momentarily after we talk about a couple of customer cases. And this is actually surprisingly a really important best practice. You want the ability to empower your end users to submit tickets, and it does a lot of things. I mean, obviously, from a psychological standpoint, the end users feel like they have a say in what's going on, and you can actually use these tickets if you have the right kind of monitoring infrastructure. You can actually capture what their user experience is in a very technical way. So even though they may say, I'm having trouble launching Exchange, or I'm having trouble watching a training video, you have information of metrics that are very relevant to what may be causing them to feel that. And a lot of times users will actually tell you not only what the symptom is, but sometimes they'll get into what they think is causing the symptom. So this actually helps you get at the bottom of what's causing it potentially. So you have proof of the performance. You have a record of the actual customer activity, and this analysis is a great way to do remote site troubleshooting. And this is something that we find is very powerful and a very sticky capability that end users like to have. So what I'd like to do at this stage is before we go to what are your challenges, I was just waiting for more folks to join, and we have more folks. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions that I want to you to take a few seconds to answer. So the first one is, when do you plan to deploy your VDI environment? And you should see that right now. Plan to deploy it in 12 months or less. You have an active VDI deployment already. You have no plans at all to deploy VDI as yet. So if you can help answer that in the next few seconds, that will be great. And I think it is something where we all would like to get our VDI completely understood before we implement it, so people have a different sense of how long it takes. So this will be quite handy for us to understand as what others are thinking. So we'll share the results with each other once we complete this voting process. All right, I'm going to give you another 10-15 seconds if you'd like to vote. You can also view the results. All right. Still some last-minute votes coming in. All right, I'm going to stop it now. And if you look at the results, it's pretty much plan to deploy in 1/4, approximately split 4 ways. Some people plan to deploy in 12 months. Some people plan to deploy. In fact, more people plan to deploy within the next 12 months. And a few already have an active VDI deployment, and a quarter of you do not have plans to deploy VDI yet. All right. So the last polling question we have is, what challenges? You have heard the 5 best practices. What challenges have you faced or anticipate in your VDI deployment? So let me show you that. And this will be a pretty interesting, informative survey. So you might sense that VDI solution is immature. You might sense that VDI solution does not scale. You might have difficult to diagnose performance issues. You might have other challenges that we haven't articulated. You might have no challenges, which is great. So if you can take the next 15 to 20 seconds to complete this vote, then I think this is the last of our votes, and then we'll move forward. And of course, we can share the results and discuss it a little bit. It's a great way for each of you to find out where others are in this process in terms of challenges. What we find is, it's all of these, which is why we have listed them. But I think one of the gotchas that people hate to see is things work, and then they find that the VDI solution does not scale because of a difficult to diagnose performance issue. And then they conclude that VDI is, or somebody else on your behalf concludes that VDI is immature. So it is important to know where people are in this process. All right, 5 more seconds before I stop the audience voting. All right, here we go. So if you look at the results, a lot of you have difficult to diagnose performance issues. Not a surprise. That's what we see quite regularly. And it's not a surprise because VDI deployment is a complex, multiple silo deployment, and you need to understand from a performance standpoint from end to end, as we have discussed. So thank you for that, and let's go to the next slide. So we have a couple of examples of folks that we have helped, and these are large customers, but they are representative, in our opinion, of the kinds of issues that you might end up seeing. By the way, before I start, some questions. I've seen a couple of questions come in, so please, if you have any questions, certainly we can discuss them. So the example is that of the U.S. Army, which is the medical side of the Army hospitals, and the problem they ran into was the VDI pilot that was being used to have doctors and nurses to take care of patients started regressing with the use of VDI, which of course is pretty problematic from customer satisfaction. And VDI was actually brought in to improve the speed of patient care, and in fact ended up doing the opposite. And what was being used is an agent-based solution which was targeted for a different purpose, to understand the physical environment, and in the VDI context lacked visibility. And we were able to, within a day, give a diagnosis, which is that we saw the agents that were there for a different purpose actually generate a heck of a lot of activity on the network from the clients to the desktop, and so much so that they were interfering with the delivery of the VDI desktop protocols. And the agent, the master agent, which was collecting all the information, was in fact very compute bound, and of course the desktops were affected by that. So you had CPU contention and a degree of network contention, and it was end user driven recordings when they were having sluggish performance that actually started the sense of, okay, so what is going on with this user that is causing all these problems? So that was a pretty powerful diagnosis. And of course, in this particular case, the agents were removed, and at that point, the patient care through VDI worked to the levels of satisfaction that they expected. And there was a considerable relief at that particular base. And of course, this is a cookie cutter pilot for other Army bases and their hospitals. The second example is from the education world. There's an online university, Athabasca University in Western Canada, which is Canada's open university, and they have a huge number of students in half the countries in the world, VMware, VDI, and Citrix XenApp infrastructure, and they were proactively concerned about performance issues so that it doesn't impact student learning. And they had absolutely no visibility into where performance problems were occurring from the infrastructure, potentially not very different from what some of you may be sensing in your own VDI deployment. And what we were able to show is the ability to see across these different layers, being able to see desktop sessions, being able to see how they affected the network and how the network affected the quality of desktop sessions, the interactions between data stores, hosts, and so on. And they were actually empowered to identify issues before they escalated and got much worse. So that was the proactive piece, and they were able to do this without an end user who could be a student from the other end of the world getting involved, which is quite problematic in their case. So the important thing that they were able to capture were sources of intermittent problems. So we had very high fidelity view of data store latency, which was affecting the login times, and the fairly fat VMs that were potentially causing memory problems by inducing swapping of various kinds. So this is an example where it was proactive use, and this is something which we think is a very good thing to be doing. You want to be in front of these problems, not react to them, because when you react to them, you have a full-blown crisis and things get worse before they get better. So let's go to a review of our 5 best practices, and just a very small description of what they mean. So we talked about the need to visualize in real time with high fidelity. That high fidelity gives you access to the intermittent issues that you might face. Real time gives you access to what's going on right now rather than what happened a while back. And again, if you want to be in the world of triage, you need to be in the world of real time with high fidelity. Of course, with a complex deployment that a VDI is, you have to understand end-to-end behavior in a piecewise manner. And what I mean by that is you need to break down the interactions so that you understand each piece and see how it's functioning and how these pieces relate to each other. And the third is alerting is important, but you need to have both best practice alerting and self-learned alerting. Best practice is great when you have all kinds of problems in your system, and self-learning will learn the bad things that are going on. So best practice is a great way to pick those up. Self-learning is great when best practice is too coarse and too general, and you have a much more diverse user community who have different styles of using desktops. We spent a little bit of time on resource contentions, which are really what cause all kinds of sort of almost unrelated performance issues to crop up at the same time. And so this is the ability to knit together from different silos how they're interacting with each other and how they're interacting in a way which is toxic, causing resource contentions. And finally, and I think very importantly, include the end users in your VDI performance understanding. Have them submit tickets which are not descriptions of problems in prose, but actually augment it with technical information, metrics, measurements that can actually help you understand what's fueling what they're saying in their ticket. And I think it helps you, and it helps the end users feel like things are being proactively done. So, I'm going to go to questions, but one of the things I want to share with you is Xangati as a company has a free trial. You can download a Xangati VDI dashboard and use it in a limited environment. And of course, if you want to use it in a larger environment, there are trials available that you can figure out. But this is something you want to make a note of if you're interested in knowing more about how we help VDI deployments with all the issues that we have discussed. And so I'm going to go to questions, and then we have two pretty impressive questions, I must say. The first one is, what are the top 3 overlooked issues when architecting a VDI solution for greater than 1,000 desktops? It was an excellent question. I think it goes to the fact that a lot of monitoring solutions retrofit scale into the world. So the 3 overlooked issues when architecting a VDI solution for greater than 1,000 desktops. I think the first one tends to be, I think it goes to storage. The way storage has to be architected for that many desktops, you have to really understand the interactions of these desktops with storage in a very clear way before you define the storage architecture in a way that can scale. So it might work when you go to 1,000 desktops, and then when you go to 5,000 or 10,000, you might struggle. And part of the reason you might struggle is your storage architecture is not scaling. So that's something that you need to spend a lot of time on. I mean, there are various ways of doing it, various companies that offer interesting solutions. But storage, I would say, is at the top. I think the second overlooked issue when architecting a VDI solution for greater than 1,000 desktops is you will have you might see it in 1,000 desktops, but when you get to 5,000 desktops, you will realize the rule that 10% or 5% of your users use 90% of your infrastructure or 95% of your infrastructure. And you have to decide, is that a reasonable thing for them to be doing? Are they important in the business that you're in that should be allowed? And I think it's something that you see at all points, even with a few desktops, but they become a source of contentions when you go to 5,000, 10,000 desktops. And so that's something which you need to consider. And I think the third overlooked issue when architecting a VDI solution for greater than 1,000 desktops is really the monitoring solution you're using. Monitoring solutions which are agent-based, monitoring solutions that use sort of what I would say non-scalable architecture in terms of reports and conventional databases will struggle as you go to greater than 1,000 desktops. And it's important to challenge the monitoring vendor you're going to with real examples of deployments that they have done which are greater than 1,000 desktops. And ask them, if you are architecturally inclined, ask them to justify why they think they can deal with 10,000 desktops or 50,000 desktops, and find a number where they can't deal with it anymore. Everyone has a number. So understanding how to bracket them is important. So, but that's, I think, an equally important aspect, and something which I believe our company pays a lot of attention to. The second question is, are there certain apps that don't work well in a VDI environment? That's again a great question. I think that the providers of VDI will tell you that there's no such thing as an app that doesn't work well in a VDI environment. But I would say that the apps that challenge a VDI environment much more than not are the ones which are highly sensitive to latency. So anything that is very jitter sensitive, will be a demanding app for the VDI environment. It can work, but it is not the same thing as showing them Microsoft Word or Exchange email or even a video. So what are apps that are latency sensitive? It depends on the domain you're looking at. I think the financial world has trading apps which are very increasingly latency sensitive. I think you have gaming, to the extent that you're doing gaming using VDI. That is something which will be a significant challenge. So look for where latency matters, and I think you'll see the more challenging apps. All right, so, and I don't have any other questions. You have been a patient, quiet audience. I appreciate, though, your time. I think, what I would suggest is look at the attachments. We have a couple of white papers that you might find interesting. that I think you can pick up, and certainly something you can review and think about. And of course, we'd love to get your rating of this particular webinar. And we appreciate very much your time and your listening to the 5 battle tested best practices for smooth VDI deployments. We hope we have given you some good insights into what you should be looking at in terms of practices for a VDI deployment. Again, thank you very much. I think I'm going to stop now, unless I'll maybe give you a minute to, if you have any questions that you want to type in. Otherwise, we will stop this. Again, let me remind you, I mean, it's a bit self-promoting, but certainly look at our xangati.com/download. Free download, I think, is a good way to understand your environment, and maybe that will help you get a sense of the challenges you're dealing with. All right. Again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it very much, and I hope this has been a useful 45 minutes for you. Bye-bye.